Just a reminder that any thoughts, opinions, and points of views expressed during this podcast are those of the individual and not of the Grand Lodge, appendant body, or concordant body that individual may belong.
Hey everybody, Jeff Bennett. We're on Pen and Compass. We have a episode that we're going to be doing talking to Perfect Ashler Publishing. I always have to say that Ashler word and think about how to say that and
Hmm.
not mumble it in an East Texas accent or say it
Sounds
wrong.
good to me.
But anyway, we're talking to Adam Sanchez, who's written a couple of books. They're a little bit different than maybe what you would think of a Freemasonry book, some different takes on that. So we're going to enjoy our conversation with him, and we want to welcome you, Adam, to the podcast. And glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. This is a first for me, so I'm just excited to to be able to talk about my recent work. Thank you.
And we not only is he an author for Perfect Ashler Publishing, but he's also going to be one of my what should we say, cruise mates.
Yeah,
We're
that's
gonna
a
be
good
on a
one.
boat together for 5 days, and probably by day three he'll be like, I want to sit down at the other end of the table from that Jeff Bennett guy. So we're playing nice right now, but probably 3 days out to sea and a few drinks in Cozumel. It'll be like, oof,
It's going to be real good, I
good to
think.
see you down there, brother.
Hmm.
So, well, this is going to be a pretty lighthearted because very practical life. This is like a probably the closest thing we've ever done to kind of a lifestyle episode, and had someone on that has a focus in kind of helping groups out and some resources for that. So we're going to be talking about how you can interact with the little ones in your life, the young people. He's got a couple of children's books that he's written, one or two, and then
Awesome.
a cookbook that he has that's kind of styled for Freemasonry and things like that. So anyway, jumping into all that, let me pull up the PowerPoint that I have. So let's start right here. What this is your book that you first put out, and we'll go into that in here in a minute in more detail. But tell me a little bit about, or tell me about how you came to be like, I want to write books. I'm a Freemason, and kind of where that all started.
Yeah, so right now, I'm coming into my residency for my doctorate, and past couple years I've been doing nothing but writing, as part of like the requirements and course load, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to find a way to make better use of my time, as opposed to just finding grumbling and writing. I was like, what about things that I actually like to write about? Don't get me wrong, education is a passion of mine, but there's other passions that I figured, why not put pen to paper, or in this case, a keyboard, and start there. Yeah.
So you said you're going to be a medical doctor?
Educational doctorate.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Because I was residency. You said residency. I think that's what threw me off.
Yeah, and that's the funny part, Jeff. I think that's how esteem goes in terms of what it is. But right now, the dissertation residency is going to begin for me this year. So
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, and some of that's flavored with my daughter is in the medical field, and that's very same terminology. So, uh,
mhm.
so I'm trying to find the questions that I had for you because I'm having to use different devices. Anyway, so you started writing these books. What do you hope is kind of comes out of that for the people that read them in kind of a high level?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the times, when people talk about Freemasonry between brethren, it's, you look for things that you have in common, you share certain interests, and it's easy to talk to another Mason about certain things that happen within the lodge. But I think for myself, all too often you hear about these stories about how great grandfathers were, how great certain people were in a particular family, the males in particular. And then when you find out they have a whole bunch of Masonic trinkets, they have a whole bunch of history with Freemasonry, but you never knew anything about what they did within the fraternity. And all of a sudden you know, you really don't know about another part of this gentleman, of this man, this brother. And so I think that for me to be able to bring some of that to light through some of the offices that we serve in, not just the worshipful master, but in this case for these cookbooks and the children's book, it's through serving the lodge as a steward.
And so maybe not everybody is a Freemason. And what's a steward? Why is that important to Freemasonry?
Well, I think that a lot of the times, and I know we had talked about this in passing just before getting started, but a lot of people have different beliefs about what Freemasonry is, what Freemasonry isn't, the hierarchy of the structure of Freemasonry, all the types of things that we as brethren in the fraternity not so much take for granted, but understand to be in place. A lot of people don't. And so with the children's book, my aim is to share in the same kind of way that I'm exposed to Freemasonry, and a lot of people have shown their exposures to Freemasonry. Um, hey, this might be more in context as to how I remember my uncle or my grandfather or my dad for that matter. And I think that by highlighting one particular like duty or job that they hold within the lodge, not necessarily always the worshipful master, but in this case, the steward again, that it shows that there's a lot more to the fraternity than just either, the esoteric, the mystical, the fantastical, and the exaggerated.
Yeah. And so I actually had a conversation, I think, in the last couple of days about this with another Freemason buddy of mine. And we're talking about our backgrounds. I regularly attend my church I've been going to for, I think my son just turned 28 years of age. So we've been going to that particular church in Arlington. And many times, sometimes I would wear, I don't do it as much anymore, but sometimes I'd wear a Masonic ring or something like that to church, or maybe be in a setting where I wore a lapel pin or something and identified myself as a Freemason kind of in this kind of public sense. And somebody would say something about, oh, you're a Freemason? And then I go, yeah. And then I kind of, probably 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I've been a Mason for 25 years. So about half of that time, I would kind of hunker down and wait for what's coming next. Is it going to be, like you said, amazingly positive? I'm connected to these are non-Masons that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
I'm connected to one of the greatest men that was involved in my life and my childhood or my family, and they're just a beacon of light, or about as negative as it can get, and people almost saying evil things about me as a person just because I said that I was a member of a certain group.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
not very tolerant.
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
very, not very, not very enlightened or educated. Not
Good way to
very
put it.
open-minded and pursuing kind of calm, progressive thought. So anyway, a little bit maybe commentary than more than I need, but anyway, so that's kind of so a steward. What does that steward provide in the lodge? I know, but which what is this book kind of trying to help? Either, especially we'll get to the cookbook, but this one right here. Why did you say not just a Freemason? He's a steward. So why did you want to show that?
Yeah, so in education as teachers, one of the things that we do with content delivery of the curriculum to students is we tend to show things in the abstract. I'll take, for example, math, right? You tend to show an operation 6 plus 4. There's your abstract. You have numbers that don't really have a meaning, but you understand their values, and then you describe a sum. So, in the same way that this book pools the abstract mindset or thought process that we have about Freemasonry, it adds the element of a story through the eyes of children, and it gives them an understanding. It connects to why, maybe in this case, Uncle Tim does what he does, and why does Uncle Tim, go through the efforts and the work that he does, and when they see the fruits of his labor, you know, now it makes more sense. Now we have an understanding as to, why the steward is, in my opinion, next to the worshipful master or the Tyler, one of the most important, members of the lodge in terms of the work that they do. So in this book, it offers, when we have that vague understanding of what that relative is as a Mason, and then what his jobs and duties are, this highlights it in a way that provides the background and keeps it out of the abstract to give it more meaning.
So, Adam, what's your definition of what a steward does in a Masonic lodge? How are they involved? And how are they kind of a critical part of, especially the fellowship of the membership and the other guests that come to a meeting? How's that
Yeah,
work?
that works. So, in my opinion, I believe that the steward is the person who preserves or improves the impression that the lodge creates, not only to the members, but to possible candidates and visitors and their families. And that can be illustrated in a number of ways, from, the way that a lodge looks, to its maintenance and upkeep, to the food that's served. Um, I think that's
Yeah,
what that's what a steward does.
so a steward is the general thing that they do, especially in the U.S., is they make sure that whenever, especially if it's the format of the stated meeting, or when we get together for degree nights, and different jurisdictions have different labels for this, called meetings, all kinds of different things. So
Yep.
their job is usually to provide a meal and allow people, because it's usually on a weeknight, and people are coming from their job and they're rushed to get there, and they don't have time to stop and eat. With travel transition kind of from their professional life to their to their Masonic life, or from their personal life if they're retired or they're not actively working. um, and it gives everybody it centers kind of the focus of the lodge. That mealtime is also a place where we invite prospective members, or we have guests. There's different times that's a public setting, usually
Yep.
within kind of things, before we open up a formal meeting, and maybe exclude people that are not of a certain degree or rank within Freemasonry. But the steward, um, it's usually in the Blue Lodges. It's usually you serve two 12-month opportunities, or stints, or whatever you want to say. And
Sure.
so junior steward, senior steward, and then you kind of move through the different officer ranks from there within a
Yep.
lodge. So it's it can be a very big part of Freemasonry, and that's kind of one way. Other times, there's other lodges that they have a meal afterwards, and they maybe just set up a reservation whenever everybody's going out to a restaurant or something similar to that. Or
Oh
they're
yeah.
kind of more event coordinator than actually cooking a meal or picking up a meal or whatever. So that's what a steward does.
Yep.
Yeah, they do have some things, but usually they're kind of outside of the formal meeting area that we call the lodge room.
Yep.
And so yeah. Um, so I think it's kind of interesting that you're talking to children, and there's so much emphasis nowadays about serving others, that I don't know if I really heard back whenever I was a kid. Um, there was some of that, golden rules, and love your neighbor as yourself, and some of those things. So kind of whenever you were thinking about this, and there's a backstory also from what I remember, reading some stuff I think on Facebook or other related things that publishing company you and Chris Galloway have put out about this. So why did you choose Uncle Tim and kind of his actual office as a steward? How does that kind of work together to teach children kind of a moral lesson, or a way that they can look at how they should act in the world?
Sure. Yeah. Like, well, the story is actually It's based on a fella that that was a brother in my lodge. He passed away. It'll be almost a year. I believe it was October 23rd last year. So he's coming up on an anniversary on that. But his name was Timothy Long, and he'd been a Mason already at this point 40 years, and he had served as a steward of our lodge. My lodge is Valley High Lodge, number
Thank
1407
you.
in
Thank you.
San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
thank you. Yeah. So Valley
Yep.
High, say that again. I'm sorry. I probably
Yep.
giggled over that.
No problem. Valley High Lodge, number 1407 in San Antonio, Texas.
Great.
Yep. And he had served as the steward of the lodge, or senior steward. We did have a junior and senior steward. And in his time working the tables, the kitchen, that kind of stuff, he had a bunch of stories. One that he told me is this was, of course, before certain resolutions came to pass in the past 2 years, but they had done a German themed dinner, and they got in trouble for serving a small glass of beer to kind of seal it all up. But that's one story that he had. But amongst other things, when I was a candidate, not even a Mason yet, you go in there and you meet a bunch of guys at the dinner table, or the common area, if you will. There was Tim sitting there, kind of with his cup of coffee. He had his own placemat, which I thought was interesting. Had his name right on it, um, and got to just talking. And at first, it was, "How are you? What's your name? Where are you from?" All the good and friendly stuff. And then later on, it started getting into, how do you know people, and what do you do? And Tim made a really good effort into finding things that were like what's the word, relationships in what we had. He At one point he was working for the state of Texas Health Department, and as an educator teacher at the time, um, he was regaling me with stories about him having to go to rural schools and go into teaching kids, or not teaching kids, but doing audits on schools for school, what is it, public health and safety. I
Right.
might be butchering that, but something to that
Yeah.
degree. And so that's how our friendship grew. And it wasn't until
Making
later on
sure
that
making sure like the fire alarms work, and like
yeah,
the physical, like a physical, the facilities. He was going in and making sure that there was a certain standard and code that the state and also the local building codes and safety codes and stuff had for fire, probably, maybe certain building materials, making sure there's no asbestos exposed, or different things like that. So yeah, it sounds like that was right up your and Chris's alley, though. I
yep.
mean, that fed into what y'all do for a living for sure.
Oh,
Chris
yeah.
Galloway being a superintendent.
Yep, yep. And it's funny. That's how we met as educators. At the time, he was the principal of the school that I was working at, and I was a teacher helping him with understanding certain parts about special education practices, because that for a lot of educators, that's still kind of foreign. It's one of those things. But the good result of it is we're brothers, but we're also friends, and we were friends before
And
before
that's yeah,
masonry.
and that's
So
just to clarify that's Chris Galloway that you're talking about there.
yes, Chris
Not
Galloway.
not
Yep.
not not Tim, not Uncle Tim Long.
Yeah, not Uncle Tim Long. Yep.
Great.
Yep. But so the book is kind of based on Tim being the focus, in terms of him being the steward. And of course you have, in this case, it's through the eyes of his nephew. So he's learning about what it is to be a steward, but he's not being told implicitly. He's everything is done through the observation, and he'll ask a couple questions, and he'll get a couple answers, very much in the same way that masonry works. And then in that same way, that I guess we get our meaning from what we see and what we participate in. He understands what it is to serve a lodge, but more importantly, to serve.
Yeah, that servant leadership was what I was trying to make sure we brought out.
Servant
That
leadership.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely a buzz phrase on all kinds of levels of life.
Oh yeah.
Well, like within professional circles, not for profit, religious kind of church, religious groups, and things like that. Volunteer organizations. A lot of times we have to remind Freemasons that are maybe being a little bit dogmatic about things. Hey, by
Yes.
the way, we're volunteering to be here, and we're actually paying to be here. on top of that. Like we're not
Right.
being, this isn't our job, or we didn't sign a 3-year stint with the military.
Right.
We're in San Antonio can be flavored like that for sure, being a military town. Freemasonry down there can be, hey guys, we're just here to have a good time. Sure to
Oh
have
yeah.
fun. Just relax. It's okay.
I agree. hmm
Sometimes we get into commentary on this on this
I'm with
podcast.
you. No, that's great. It's great because I'll say one thing. Like, I know that my lodge isn't as big as it used to be, but the chemistry of the fellows, the brethren that make up that lodge, I can guarantee you won't find that everywhere else.
Yeah,
And so with that, yeah, it's not all just about the ritual. It's about really, enjoying each other's company and
yeah,
paying to be there too, right?
right.
hmm
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've let me see what let me see how I'm looking on my there's a little bit more about Uncle Tim, and there's all the things there on screen. So people want to take a second maybe to read that. I don't know if it's large enough or not, but let's move on. Your
Yep.
background, the Steward's Apron cookbook.
Yep.
So,
So
so tell us about kind of the genesis of all this, and um, what's going on with this book.
yeah, so with this book, I think that sometimes the need to have a meal, um, that gets passed off on a lot of brethren, big lodge or small lodge, and so what happens a lot of times is that we still want to at least respect the idea that there's a meal. So all too often we might run to that box of pizza, that box of fried chicken, that kind of thing, and you put it out there. And don't get me wrong, there's a purpose and a meaning behind it. But I think what happens is that it gets lost in translation. And just like you were saying, you're trying to rush into the lodge. Maybe you fight in traffic. Maybe your job gets you out late enough to just maybe grab dinner, or you're coming in right into a lodge meeting for, or what is it, meeting time. But you know the impression that a good steward might create is, if you walk into that lodge and you see those boxes sitting there on a table, a couple paper plates, it might be inviting depending on how you dress it up, but I can guarantee it's
So
probably
those
not.
are usually, yeah, but a lot of times those are degree nights,
Could be. I
or
mean,
yeah,
I've
no, I mean it can be. There are Masonic groups that is their kind of stated monthly meeting deal. I mean, different cultures too, but yeah,
oh yeah.
no, I mean, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but yeah, you're good. And kind of like what you mentioned with some of our Filipino brethren, to come in and see three big trays of food that are prepared.
We talked about
You know,
that pre-recording time.
oh,
So yeah.
pre-recording.
So yeah,
Okay.
so there's we were talking about kind of when we were gathering up and warming up, um in Freemasonry in the US, there are lodges that have been around for a long time, and over the years a certain culture and membership in different, especially in big cities, in Dallas Fort Worth area, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Texas, and then all over the Midwest and all the time zones. Filipino brethren have come in and just really add to our amazing culture. And they, as a culture, they value Freemasonry still, and a lot of their political leaders in the Philippines are connected to that. And so that changes kind of what's going on with mealtime. Filipino culture kind of comes in whenever you get around that. And you and I were kind of comparing some notes about visits that I've had to Chicago lodges, and then you're talking about the San Antonio area, what you've experienced.
Oh
So
yeah.
sorry, that was, I kind of wanted to
Oh
back
no,
up
thank you.
because
Yeah,
we hadn't really talked about that on camera yet. So,
right. To give a little
or
context, right?
recorded, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's good. But yeah, in that same way, the impression that maybe freshly made food or food made by hand creates. I wanted to offer a cookbook that, number one, was easy to follow. I'll be honest, every recipe here, it comes from something that either in my family or within my wife's family, we started with these, right? These recipe cards, and we've tweaked them. to be at maybe 5 ingredients or less, right? I mean, any of the great meals, hamburgers, even steaks, that kind of thing. It's usually 5 things or less to have a good meal. And so I did that with that in mind. I also thought about what do guys within that like age 35 to 60 um, enjoy eating, because one of the other things is, even though food can bring us together, depending on what's served, it can also separate, and create some dissension. But with
Oh
that
yeah,
being
I
said,
love that. I'll jump in here. I
yeah.
got to do some Boy Scout leadership training, and for 6 months, we were all trying to lose weight. Also, we were going to be going to the mountains of New Mexico on Philmont Scout Ranch, and we were going to be in certain areas to where you couldn't be over a certain body mass index, and so you could either grow taller or you could
Mhm.
lose weight. Those were your two options. And so everybody was on this like diet where it was very protein based for most of us. And I had 20 people, both men and women, almost probably down the middle, half and half.
Mhm.
And I learned how much people lie to themselves first, and then the cook or the steward or the quartermaster or whatever his or her title is. Oh, I eat everything. I eat anything. And as soon as you put something out in a dish out in front of somebody,
Oh
and
yeah.
you get the weirdest like
Yep.
just these like panic attack stares. Like people
Oh yeah.
just lose their minds.
Oh yeah.
They start emoting. They lose all logic, all like reason. They don't like. Well, you told me you eat anything, and this is what I like to eat.
Right.
Well, that's
Right.
not what I eat. And it gets, you're right. It gets adversarial,
Yep.
and people get angry. They get mad. They get hurt, and they get. It's. I mean, people have scars over this. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure. I'm sure family reunions don't happen anymore because somebody brought something, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go back to that.
Yep. Or you have that one family member that brings that one dessert that nobody eats, but it sits there. But it's a
Well,
thing. It's there.
we struggle with it in my family. Um, Mine and my wife, the collective big group. My wife's family eats certain things, and I just look at it and go, no.
I yep. Nope.
Jello, fruit salad. They have like their little green beans. No, like if you want to saute green beans and like make them like kind of modern, like the way we've been eating them for the last 10 years, like kind of like with almonds in them, and you want to like make them into a dish, not just something goes next to turkey and dressing on a plate,
Yep.
then we're all good.
Hmm.
I'm gonna eat more dressing, thank you. More stuffing, whichever one it's
Exactly.
supposed to be.
Right. I'll have a little bit more of this than that. Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing. The wife has she's originally from Minnesota, and on her mom's side of the family, they have a lot of Dutch heritage. And one of the dishes that they prepare is something called Dutch mess. And Dutch mess is a bunch of different foods put together. So you have wilted lettuce, potatoes, bacon, vinegar, onions, and to some people it's the bee's knees, and not to me. I'll have the other
Sounds
thing.
like kind of that cabbage dish that's kind
Yeah.
of German and also kind of British. There's a cabbage dish that's kind of similar to that, like fried cabbage, where you take the cabbage and you put bacon with it. Basically it's peasant food is what it is. It's
Right.
just like what they had. They had leftovers after they'd already eaten everything, and these are kind of okay. We're gonna have this like vegetable kind of soaking up all this stuff because we don't have anything left. Like
Yeah.
this is like kind of the end of the month, or this is like we're waiting for kind of get through a certain season or something, and we don't have anything, and this is what I can throw together, and it just became popular.
Yep.
So
All the good creative culinary work there. Yeah. Yeah. But for me, that one, that's not
so
so good.
so there's a on my mom's side of the family, we're British. My grandmother was actually English, and so
Oh.
I didn't know I was going to talk about this today, but there's a thing where some people call it beans on toast.
Yep.
but then it's also rare bits. So
Rarebits. It's,
so 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 it's baked bean. So what it is, you put toast down,
mhm.
and then you heat up baked beans, kind of traditional New England, so whatever, bush type beans,
Okay.
and you heat that all up, and then you put cheese on it if you can eat cheese. And
Okay.
usually the baked beans have a little bit of bacon in them or something, or out of the can, maybe have a little bit of onion in there, or some whatever. And you basically, it's probably colder weather, and you would my mom, by the time things came on, we were heating that up in the microwave. But you can,
Hmm.
or using the toaster or whatever. But that's what my grandmother came from England in the 1940s, early 50s to Texas, and that would be something that you would get, just like, what are you making for kind of an evening meal, and it would be Welsh rabbit is what it kind of turned into in our family, but it's Welsh rarebits, and it's
Okay.
basically just like you don't have enough, and it's a lot like in Central America and South America where they eat a lot of beans and rice,
Yes. Yep.
and kind of
There's
in
some go
kind of
there.
in the Hispanic or Latin culture, you
Oh
have
yeah.
a lot of that, and it's kind of the equivalent of, not the rice and not the refried beans or the pinto beans, but you have this other type of bean, and starch and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty, you start kind of looking at those cultural things. They're not that different, and it's kind of funny how
Yep.
people came up with the same taste and they're doing the same components, Adam. And that
Yeah.
that, that would be something cool
Like,
for us, you know?
it's yeah, I mean people make connections like the I guess the similarities of like pyramids in Egypt versus South America, but
Yeah,
in the same way you're talking about food. Like, I mean, honestly, the toast and the beans. I mean, you have a tortilla, your beans, and that's pretty much it. The only difference is one gets folded, the other one doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and put cheese on it.
Yeah.
For
I do.
me, I sprinkle stuff on top, or I eat it with kind of a Louisiana hot sauce or something,
Yep.
to spice it
There's
up for
salsa.
me. I mean, of course, I pretty much Louisiana hot sauce or some type of picante or something on everything. Um,
Same
It'll
here.
catch up with
Same
me
here.
one day, but yeah. Um, so what else about this cookbook would you want to kind of relate to everybody?
Well, in the same way that we had kind of talked about Uncle Tim, same thing. I have actually a copy with me right here, right? And the
So are
the the
some of
same
these
gentleman,
recipes his actual recipes?
yeah, they're actual recipes. And one of them, at the end of this book, I don't know if you can see it. I know it's pretty bad, but
Well, no, because your
there's a
background's taken out. But I put
yeah.
back up on the PowerPoint, the description off of Amazon.
Oh, okay. And so, there's an actual dedication section to Tim and him being, the inspiration, the basis for these books. you know and with that being said, it also has his last rest, or the recipe that he bestowed on me in terms of what he preferred or liked to cook when it was available. So it was like king ranch chicken, pinto
Right.
beans, Mexican style green beans, calabacita, all that good stuff. So
So help me out, because once you go north of Austin, Texas,
mhm.
there's a North Texas and a South Texas, and
Oh
I
yeah.
I'm a north I'm a north I'm an East Texan that lives in North Texas over half my life. So educate me on what are Mexican style. Maybe I need to get my wife's family to figure out green beans then. So maybe you can give me a new uh, recipe. But anyway,
So yeah, with a lot of the with the foods, and you're going to see a lot of similarities in terms of how they might look or presentation. But really, it's one change of things. So, in terms of Mexican style green beans, you're going to see a use of tomato sauce, tomatoes a little more than you might, let's say, in a more traditional, maybe
you're
bacon bits and onion kind of green bean
northern
setup.
Northern Europeans, like
Right.
kind of the German,
Yeah.
British, Scandinavian background versus kind of the 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 French, Italian, Spanish.
Right. And although tomatoes weren't native to South America, with the, the advent of explorers bringing them over, they were adopted and incorporated into the food because, of course, flavor, that kind of thing, and just general acceptability, how it worked with a
Yeah,
lot of people's palates. So yeah, yeah.
cool. What else about the cookbook? Anything else, or you want to
Um,
keep moving on? Or?
let's see here. There, it's broken up into a couple sections. You have appetizers. I don't know about you, but sometimes like an oven sheet of nachos might be dinner as opposed to just the starter. And so that's one of the things the book also gives to Masons who are looking to maybe start cooking or start their path on preparing food for the masses. Maybe you don't have to have a full on entree. Maybe a variety
Well, and that
of
goes
food
back to
might
the
be
degree
something.
night. That goes back to the degree night where you're going to be there conferring this degree. The ceremony takes hours,
Yep.
and you need to get started early, so you don't need a big sit down meal.
Right. Yep. And
And that's
so,
where the pizza kind of the delivery pizza, the pickup, or whatever kind of feeds into that, or the Subway, like the cut up Subway sandwiches or the Jimmy John's or whatever.
yep,
Um, the sandwich trays help out with that too.
I
But
think
yeah,
so.
I mean, a lot of times it's like I really am not that hungry, but I need to eat something by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, or
Yep.
my blood sugar's going to drop, and you don't really want to be around me. So
Hmm.
remind me of that if I'm being cranky on the boat. Yo, Jeff,
Right. We'll be
let's
close
go
to
find
Lido
some
deck. So,
nachos, dude.
right, just kind of put that arm around. Let's go, my
Mi
brother. Let's go get
hermano,
some food.
some nachos. Aquí.
Yep. But yeah, the other part that I'd want to just mention about the book is there is a chapter on green beans. I've heard rumblings about other brothers trying to make whole cookbooks about, just green beans. More power to them. I
So
just
so go back, and that's kind of you're kind of starting in the middle, or the to like go back and maybe talk about that, because that's with Facebook, I would say in the last, especially since COVID, maybe even before that, and kind of in Texas Freemasonry culture, this whole kind of dogging green beans have kind of become the kicking boy of all side dishes or main dishes.
Yeah, and I think for some brethren, it's like a I guess a term of endearment. For others, it's just a good joke to throw around there, a dad joke, if you will. But with the book itself, the green bean's still a mighty plant, and it still serves a great purpose, right? But going back into history of vegetables and food, and you touched on parts of it, right? Like the Dutch mess, it was a peasant's food, much like a lot of foods were. It was what was accessible, what was available. Well, green beans were, are one of those vegetable foods that you can access pretty easily in the can, frozen, fresh, and you can get them in relatively bigger quantities at without incurring the same expense that you might for other
Well, you can just say
vegetables,
the
right?
word cheap. They're cheap. They have a nice low entry level price point.
Right. And so if you're considering feeding, a number of people, especially at a lodge, green beans are a go-to, right? So, I just in this book I have about 10 recipes that'll uh
Not
that'll
not for me. I'm like, no, I'm good. Unless it's like let's look at the bigger picture, or the yeah. So probably the ones on the right hand side of the screen I would eat, and maybe
yes.
this bowl in the front. I'd eat those nice French's, um, onion snaps or whatever off the top, and
I'm
then
with you.
keep all the other stuff underneath it.
Oh,
I'm not Casserole is a four-letter word that starts with a C for me, by the way. That's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, so this, by the way, welcome to Pen and Compass podcast. This is not your normal episode. I mean, we get silly a little bit, but we're usually like more somewhere behind me. We're trying to gather the moon and jump off of mountaintops, esoterically.
it's all right.
But no, it's kind of funny how, yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's just kind
Yeah.
of, I'll pick out the bacon even or something. It's
Right,
like,
there you go. Right. Find the good in it, right? So with that, yeah, I mean, those are really the bigger parts of the book. Again, I try to offer, something in terms of appetizers, entree meals, green beans, and then of course side dishes, so that when you're with any guy who's called to serve literally dinner, it might give them an opportunity to, or
So
ideas to,
what's the
if
method
not,
of cooking? Are you promoting skillets or ovens or like barbecue
oh,
pits and grills? And
the food
because you have a
itself is a
recipe there,
mix.
do you also recommend this is the way you cook it, or here's the method?
Oh yeah, so a lot of this food can be done typically like countertop. So without cooking, half of them are gonna use the oven or a stove top, but they'll say that. What I like, what I focus on in this book is you have two types of guys typically, right? You have guys who need everything implicitly given to them, so step by step, with options, for food allergies, any of that sort, and that's what's in the book. And then you also have suggestions or um, what is it, suggestions for substitutions, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that's also in
it's
the
scalable. I
recipe.
think I think I think what you're looking for there is it can be scalable. You can take this and say this feeds 10 people, whatever it is, for like 6 people, 12, 10, whatever. And then like, well, I'm feeding 40, so I need to quadruple the amounts here. And I need to figure out how to cook that much through what I've got sitting in the kitchen at the lodge building.
Yep.
Because that's
And then
also
it
a constraint also, because like, it depends on where you're at and what's going on.
Yeah, and then on the other side of that portion, like in terms of the book, it also just has a summary. Some guys are just tell me what I need and let's go, and it has that as well. So if there's
So
some guys who are a little more, I guess, savvy in the kitchen, there it is. They can just pick it up and run with it.
so especially like as we were allowed to get out of our houses only for going to the grocery store and a few other places during COVID. And even before that, I do a lot of my own shopping and cooking and
Mhm.
all those type of things. I love to eat. I love to cook. All those type. I'm sure you're right there in that same camp. And so sometimes for me, and then I had a job a few years ago where I was working an excessive amount of hours on for good because it was I was working in the residential roofing business. A hailstorm hit, and for about 90 days, I was working about 6.5 days a week. I was
Wow.
working on Saturdays and even kind of doing paperwork at the house on Sundays, and maybe even kind of more office work. But 6 days a week, I was pretty much with my customer base, making sure I got every dollar that I could
Yep.
out of that kind of work event. And the I would kind of a lot of it was here locally where I live in the Arlington Fort Worth area, and I would come back home and I would hit the Kroger right by my house, and I would just walk around and I would just literally see what needed what they were almost handing to me. They were dropping the price down to a third of it, or whatever was on sale, the
Mhm.
manager special.
Yep.
I terrorize my daughter if I take her shopping because I'm always taking the clearance or the manager special, or
Yep.
she doesn't know it's something coming out of the meat section at Kroger in our house, especially out of the freezer that doesn't have
Mhm.
and if Kadeem Lowe was or if he was a part of this and a few other people that have spent time whenever I've cooked meals for them at the house, they see that wrapper come off and it was whatever dollars and now it's this.
Oh
But
yeah.
I would literally just walk around and go, what catches my eye, and I'm gonna take this home and I'm gonna go out and between my kitchen and my back porch where my propane grill is, Weber
Yep.
propane grill, and I would spend a couple hours doing that, and that was therapy. That was that was my recreation. I didn't like I maybe make myself an adult beverage while I'm doing that and just calm down and relax for the day. And I
Yeah.
think food has that effect on us, just like music has a certain effect on us
Oh
for our
yeah.
mental and emotional. So
I agree 100%. That's actually a really good way to put, some of the therapeutic things that cooking can do. I mean, aside from just, creating more fellowship. Yeah,
uh,
for sure.
and and there's also something that I didn't know I was doing it until I kind of went back and maybe got some more insight psychologically. Whenever I'm in an outside sales role, and a lot of times I'm inviting people that are my customers or in business with them or whatever, and I like to go eat pizza or I like to go eat
Mhm.
sushi if they eat sushi or something that can be brought out and there's like kind of small bites about it or even appetizers and things like that you were talking about. And
Yep.
we're doing the same thing at Lodge, right? Because we're all going through the line. We're making our own plates usually, or something like that. The guys who made the food, they're standing there serving, waiting for the next thing to happen, just like staff at a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
But it's like we're running our own little restaurant space, and then there's not that kind of weird commercial division. It's like we're family, but it's fraternal and it's brotherhood. And
Oh
when,
yeah.
the way that we share food and we share that time together, it is one of those things that builds up a certain energy within that room. And it's always funny, like guys are on a diet or whatever, and then I'm the one that like I never eat sweets or whatever, and then they're sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have a chocolate chip cookie and a brownie and whatever, and
Yep.
watch it all, and man, I wish I had some milk right now. This is great, because I
Hmm.
never try to eat that stuff. We don't have it around the house because I just consume all of it if it's there.
That's me too. Yep.
Yeah,
That's me too.
and so kind of going back, I've done the steward stuff a little bit, kind of on what I would term the York right side years and years and years ago.
Okay.
Um, and I would go to Long John Silver's, and I would buy like the the fish and chicken combo, and would buy like the big 30-piece whatevers,
Okay. Yeah.
and take those to the lodge, and I would do the same thing at like for with fried chicken and all that stuff. And what was so funny was I this has been a couple decades ago, or at least a good decade and a half ago, something like that. And they would they would see what was showing up, and the older retired guys would come, and they're like eat, and we'd have a good time, and then like maybe we'd be going into the meeting time or whatever, and we'd be walking down the hallway, and one of my buddies that lives up in Oklahoma now, um, Bill would say, if you ever meet my wife, you're never supposed to tell her that I have Long John Silver's once a month on on the second Monday,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I will be in trouble with her and my cardiologist after my
Hmm.
heart attack. I'm not supposed to eat because man, it smells so good, and it's like all the sauces, and he goes, man, I love it. Like keep bringing it. Don't not do that. So there was,
Hmm.
sometimes some people may take it wrong, and then other times it's like I need my little fast food, like like
Yep.
give me my
Gotta
hit,
get that fix. Yep.
give me my fried
Yep.
food hit for the month or
Hmm.
whatever. Give me
Yep.
my my Long John Silver's treat
Oh, I
once a
believe
month.
it.
So you never
Yep.
know what you're gonna get. So
Hmm.
um, any other book titles? I think we covered both of them, right?
No, I think that's it right now. I mean, depending on what the success of these books look like, it might encourage me to do a little more. I'll be honest with the children's book. Um, as an educator, I really just I see through the eyes of my students, and I think that they try to make connections on their observations, but a lot of the times it's hard when it's not completely, I guess, revealed to them. So, for our youngest learners, one of the things I'd like to highlight is how Freemasonry is a positive in a family setting. And so rather than have that stay vague, paint it in a picture like this. And I'd like to talk, or at least maybe consider other books that discover for the kids, um, what those other officer or membership roles bring.
So my Masonic family history goes back to the 1950 when my
Wow.
papa joined, and out of that, my dad got a job that he stayed at for 33 years as a non-Mason. Um, there were a lot of it in our small town. You know, we just kind of had a network between my dad and my papa, who was the Freemason. We had a network of trusted people in town that could take care of our repair, whatever, right? Like whatever you
Yeah.
needed, you had somebody that could do that skill or was in that business or whatever. And we're going to treat you honestly and probably almost give you things at cost or even to the debt, financial debt. They would cut you deals that you're like, you shouldn't do that. Even today, I mean, whenever like you were talking about, you and Uncle Tim were talking and he got to know you, well, you kind of go, oh, that guy can do handyman work, and I need my new 70-inch TV we got for Christmas. Brandon Kiefer, my buddy in the Yorkite, came and hung that at my house because I didn't trust myself to,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
to do it. So
Yep.
um, there's all kinds of little bitty advantages. I don't think that people understand. They just see the weird thing that they saw on YouTube or on the History Channel or whatever, and they see all the like we were talking about the weird stuff. And I think um, when we're getting better in our newer generations of talking about that. And so Uncle Tim as a steward is what age group can probably read this book, and where would you say that falls? You said some younger learners, and
Yeah,
kind of what's the
I
maybe
would.
what's the you know the age range for the average reader, or maybe the kid that excels a little bit past his or her age group.
Yeah, the in my mind, in terms of the characters in this age are somewhere between eight and 10, and I think that those are the ages when kids start to develop a personality. They start to look at things a little more based on the operations and what, like, nuts and bolts of things. That's when they really become curious. And so that's kind of where this age range is at, that 8 to 10. They're still curious. They have a lot of questions, but they're also, with wide open eyes looking at what's in front of them and trying to really get a lot of meaning. And so that's where this book I think would be headed, um, to kind of cultivate whether or not, you know, masonry's for them,
But there's also some of these books that maybe a 4, 5, 6 year old, 7 year old would be like. It's just cool that there's just books sitting there at their uncle's house or their grandparents' house, or their family member, their neighbor's house or something. They may see it and go, "What's this all about?" And my
Sure.
daughter had some of those books whenever my wife was reading a book about how to raise a strong-willed child,
Mhm.
and my daughter was kind of climbing up in my wife's grill and, "What are you reading, mommy?" and all this kind of stuff. And I think you could have those same kind of things where it would be a conversation starter, kind of sitting there in a living room area or something like that, and like, what's going on with that, or younger brother, younger sister, younger sibling, younger cousin dynamic, to where the books may be being read, to kind of all the grandkids or all the nieces and nephews or something
Oh
like
yeah. Yep, yep. And I think that's where we're headed with that. It doesn't have to be to one particular age. Characters in the book between 8 to 10, but definitely for the whole family, if you will, especially, the
that. Yep.
kiddos.
My
Oh
kids
yeah.
are in their mid to late 20s now, and I've been a member of the fraternity for 25 years. So they've pretty much been, they don't remember me not having facial hair, and they don't remember me not being a Freemason. And,
Yep.
and there's so many kind of little awesome anecdotes. One of them being, I'm in a part of Freemasonry is called the Knights Templar,
Mhm.
and we have for years gone to just a pizza place and just sat down or an Italian place where anywhere we can go BYOB, and we would just have like a past commanders dinner for that group right before Christmas happened.
Oh, that's nice.
Early on in the first couple of December, kind of things slowing down and everything. So when my kids were really younger and we were two incomes, two kids, wife school teacher, I'm getting my career started. We didn't have a lot of video game quarters and money. And so that was whenever Mimi and Paw Paw came into town. They got treated, and we would always go eat somewhere where there was an arcade, a burger place or pizza place or whatever.
Yeah.
And and so that same night, my parents would not come to that gathering, but my buddy Michael Bishop did. And whenever he figured, and Michael Bishop was very much a part, well, he still's around, but he was very much about this age that you're talking about. My son got started being around Michael on a regular basis, and uh, he would bring a roll of quarters for my son and my daughter.
Oh,
for
he must have been the man.
they loved. I mean, they wouldn't like being drugged. Not they're getting to eat pizza like on a Tuesday
Hmm.
night or something, and then they had video games, and then my wife and I got to hang out with the people that we wanted to and being adults and not have this like 4 year old or 7 year old or whatever kind of I'm bored and
Yep.
this is days before we could just hand them an electronic device and maybe okay I play with my Hot Wheels for 8 minutes and now I'm bored and
Yep.
so they would like go off and and I'm telling this story not to just tell a family story but to show how Freemasonry even extends out into our families
Oh
if
yeah.
if you want it to be that way and and we're not one of those Masonic we're not I'm not a Freemason that everything I do my wife and I do together and do Freemasonry how you want to do it we pick and choose kind of the times that we do all that but one of the things I didn't add that same daughter of mine that got the roll of quarters
Uh-huh.
she eventually got scholarships out of different Masonic groups whenever she got into college and I mean we're talking nice scholarships, not just your token $500 a semester or something.
Oh, it's
And
awesome.
yeah, so I mean, I really don't think sometimes that whenever I talk to people, they see it from the outside and they see a very thin kind of two-dimensional, one-dimensional thing, and
Right.
they don't
Right. I
understand
agree.
how enriching and enhancing it can be to our lives, and why we spend so much
Exactly.
time and energy and we have so much passion for it. Those of us that are eat up with it, obsessed with it.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's why I picked the food portion because I think food, everybody, everybody can relate to food somehow. And in the same way, you know, when there's food, there's fellowship, right? When there's fellowship, there's brotherhood. So yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah, so I hope I need to start working with my worshipful master at my lodge that I started in here in Arlington. I want to do a presentation that I haven't ever gotten a chance to do for my own Blue Lodge, but I usually go to Blue Lodges and do it, talking about symbolism and interpreting it. And he and I were talking about it, and I'm like, I really want you to just call like a special meeting. I don't really care about the head count. And we have a new back nice veranda deck thing that we've built and can hold probably 30 people pretty comfortably.
Pretty
I
good
said, we're just
size.
gonna have like a brotherhood, like I'll come and do my presentation. Hopefully that'll spark these great conversations. And then we can go out in the back and, just goof off, I'll say. you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
um,
right.
be adult men and just wanting to kind of chill out in our own little kind of lounge area, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
and like we don't really incorporate we have all these great facilities in that particular building, but we don't incorporate kind of those type of events where sometimes we use them for different things, but this time of the year we're coming into the fall. The temperature dropped in Texas here in the last 24 hours, and so let's make it happen. Let's do something scaled to that. So I think the same thing you're talking about here.
Oh
So
yeah. Hmm.
do you have anything else in here besides food, or is there any kind of setting up events or anything like that? Or
No, again, that's something that I played with in the first draft of this book. I think I finished this draft in December 2024, and it didn't come out till, well, 8 months later. So
yeah,
again, there's things that I'm also looking at, maybe in a different book. But I'm gonna wait on it. I just want to see if feedback alone, what they think of the recipes. I'm hoping that they're pretty easy. What I'm also hoping is that if I get some recommendations or some positive criticisms, and maybe get a little more complicated, because I think maybe that's something that brethren might be ready for. But this here is just to kind of see, or actually kind of get to all types of cooking levels. But yeah, we'll see. There's definitely more to come. Just kind of waiting to see. We've only been out a couple. What can I say? A couple of months now. Almost.
yeah. It came
Almost.
out what in like July, and we're in
Yeah.
September 2025 when we're
Yep.
recording this. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, and y'all have done I want to compliment you and Chris, and you know, we through my different Facebook profiles and pages and groups and stuff, have done a great job of saying, "Hey, it's out there, come and get it," kind of thing. Like, kind of ringing the dinner bell, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
kind of saying, "Hey, come and get it," and those type of things. So, I'm sitting here. I haven't gotten a chance to read the book, so I'm asking you things. Did you put any blessings or any kind of prayers or anything pre meal prayers? If I can say that.
No, and that's also something that I had considered in the
It's
draft,
always
but
you can
I,
do you can do different versions. You can come back and
yes,
add to
and
stuff.
that's what that was discussed, like let's get this one out there, let's get the feedback, and then, if we need to tweak it and do a revision and
Yeah.
rehaul the book, there it is. But no, these are things that we're considering too. I mean, there's a book I want to say with Perfect Ashler Publishing where there's a book of prayers, and it was written by a fellow brother who is also, I believe, either in seminary school or just finishing, and so he had wrote a lot of prayers that are, I think, that go beyond, the 4 or 5 that we might find in our Texas Monitor.
You talking about Doug Reese?
Is that I think that's the
That's
name.
that's the Perfect Ashler Publishing. Your
Yep.
fellow, not yeah. He's the one. He's actually going to be on the cruise with us also.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Masonic Con cruise 2020 going out of Galveston. What's the date?
Yep.
Like the
October
27th or something?
25th. I want to say to the 31st, 30th.
Yeah.
So
No,
Mondays.
we come back on the 30th. Like, so
Uh-huh.
anyway, and so that's one of the main reasons that Adam and I are taking some time to chat with each other, kind of in this public forum, is gearing up towards that. And you're going to be doing a presentation. I'll go ahead and talk to you about that. You're going to, I think I've got maybe Masonicon Cruise. Are you going to be doing a presentation, or are you an audience member?
I think I'll be an audience member. I know that we're looking to also do a
But
turtle
you're
degree.
also you're kind of co-coordinating it with Chris Galloway.
Yep.
You're
So
staffing.
yes, so just like, the way our stewards work, Chris is in front of a lot of things, but I'm there to make sure the tent poles are right, the ropes are going in the right direction, all that good stuff, and support them that way, and then of course get out in front and then kind of enjoy the what's the word, the fellowship that comes from it all.
So, what would you say you've been kind of in a positive way? What have you found that you feel like you're, as an author, as a Masonic author, like your strength, or what are you confident about? What are you enjoying as you're doing all this?
I just like the idea that there's a lot of like-minded brethren who want to go beyond the mystical portions of Freemasonry and really get to the practical stuff. Because I think what happens is that, as when we experience those degrees and all the things that happen within them, there's a lot of reverence, there's a lot of I'm just going to say magic to it. And don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful thing when you're there to behold it, but when it comes down to it, and you're in those stated meetings, the business, everything that isn't from the ritual, there's a lot more of that. And so I think by providing tools like this, references, if you will, in terms of a cookbook, other things that the newer Masons can now bring to their families, I think it really supports the fraternity in a manner that brings it out of that abstract that we talked about in terms of learning. And now it's out there for everybody with a fresh with a fresher appeal.
And it's kind of interesting in kind of a certain aspect. The children's book is an investment. We hear a lot of speeches a lot of times, especially when we go to these big meetings or you get around certain people, and they're like, "Oh, if we just got the message out of Freemasonry to this group of people, or you need to support our youth groups or whatever," which are all great things to do. But
Sure.
this book on the children's side, it may be that little spark that whenever we talk to a lot of people about how did you get into it, I remember seeing my papa's Scottish Rite ring. I remember seeing my uncle's square and compass or on his truck, or I remember I was blah 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 years old, in kind of my teenage years or my young adult years or whatever, and I went to a Masonic funeral and was impressed with that ceremony. And so
Yep.
there's always some kind of catalyst.
Yes.
And this may be one of those, what we would say in other parts of things. This is almost like a seed ministry or something where you're
Yeah.
you're you're showing kids, right here on this cover, there's three squares and compasses. There's one on a kid, there's one on the adult member, and then there's one on the side of the building. And
Oh,
so,
you caught that. Yeah.
huh?
It's you caught that. I'm glad you made the observation,
Right.
you know,
And
and
yeah,
it's a, you know, it's, masonry isn't just about the individual, in the same way we learned that it's about, contributing toward a greater edifice. Masonry should be a positive thing in not only the home, the individual, but the family that he serves. Yeah.
well, very good. Well, we're going to take a break right there. Um, Great segment.
Okay.
I got to talk about my disgust for green beans. You got to talk about how you wrote two great engaging books for a couple different, like very different audiences. So we're gonna take a break with that and come back and talk to you a little bit more about a couple of things about you and also your involvement with the Grand Lodge of Texas Committee on Education. So we're gonna take this break and then we'll see you on the next side, everybody.